commercialization and IP business from a Singapore perspective. I'm quite honored and quite humbled that a small country like Singapore could be invited to this platform, sharing with the giants like China and the United States. Whilst traveling from airport to my hotel, I asked the driver whether he knows Singapore. He doesn't know where Singapore is. But not to worry, my slides I will give one or two, some information about Singapore. Now I want to talk about the role of IP intermediary. And I'm seeing increasingly more and more of intermediary coming into the IP industry and the marketplace. And I will share with you my experience in this industry. On your right, you are very familiar with technology providers. In fact, I spent more than 8 years studying the technology transfer, the largest technology transfer in Singapore with the research organization called A*STAR, Agency for Science, Technology and Research. I grew the technology transfer team from 23 before I left 2 years ago to a people count of 80 people doing active IP and commercialization. And that will be my talk for tomorrow, an insight into technology commercialization from mine to market if you come back again. But today I want to really talk about IP business, how to get industry, especially small and medium-sized company, to really look and appreciate IP. And I want to introduce you to an organization which is defined now as IP intermediary, or some call it innovation intermediary. By definition, they are in between, and both the technology provider and the industry trying to particularly help the industry find technology from the R&D and technology provider. So really, they are organization that helps to bring together. Now, I have given you more slides is in the CD, and I will not go through all the slides in detail, but this, I give you the slides in detail so that you can interpret and read it at your own time. So in the interest of time, you will find that I may skip through slides, but the idea will still be delivered to you. I'm going to give a quick overview of the intermediary happenings in Australia, in US, in Europe, and China. And then I'll conclude to how Singapore respond by setting up an intermediary organization. So it was 2 years ago that they invited me to start this new organization, and I'll be happy to share with you, particularly the practical part of IP, business, and commercialization. A very quick definition, IP intermediaries are independent third party that play a very important role to bring people together to collaborate. They provide a few things, including information, promote transaction, create as a mediator, especially when deals break down. I've seen a lot of deals that breaks down. And also provide advice on funding, which is needed to bring technology into the marketplace. By the way, there's a paper written on it. The details are there, written by the Australian Trade and Commission. I give you an example. A company just a year ago approached me for power electronic device. So this is a very young startup company, but with experience in a multinational corporation in China, India. He knows there's a market opportunity for new power electronics. So he approached me, how can I build such a device? So I know people who do semicon. I know people who do design. So I'm able to provide him information to know where he can connect and get the technology. And knowing that, also to teach him or to help him find partnership. And of course, if a deal breaks down, I will try to help him work out a licensing agreement or collaboration with the two technology providers. Last but not least, I will tell him where he can get funding, whether it be private VC funding or government funding. So this is how an intermediary help, a company to get access into technology. Added to that, the intermediary help to address some gaps in the market. For example, information, I just talked to you just now. Access, okay, if I know this technology from King Abdullah, City of Science and Technology, who do I talk to? We are familiar, but the industry may not be familiar. So we must guide them. Do we talk to the faculty staff, or we talk to the TTO, or who do we talk to, the sponsored office? So it is important to help them assess. Okay, what about if I'm interested in this technology, how do I go about getting it? Is it a license, is it a joint agreement, or is it with a spin-off? So what are these mechanics? Of course, we need human people at the end of the day who do the technology transfer. And we also know that big organizations, even when I was in A-STAR, there are 14 research centers, there are so many universities. So each university and research center has its own challenges within the organization. Companies do not know how to address it. So this is where I'm helping another company as well. He's interested in a pressure mapping thing for the food, so that you can measure pressure on your food for diabetics or for anything. So I'm able to tell him where to find the technology. I'm able to link him to the tech transfer. And the tech transfer, he either work a collaboration agreement or a licensing agreement. And of course, the inventor started off with one organization, and then he left the organization to somewhere else. But we can still help the company find these people as a consultant. And then, of course, knowing the institution, we know who to talk to, who to press button to get a decision done for the agreement. So these are what intermediary does. And of course, in the paper itself, it talks about SME are generally interested in finding new technologies. They need funding, and they need scale up, and so forth. So these are some experience I had. Later on, I will share with you. So this is an sort of a survey from Australia, and I think it's no different if you take the same survey that the US conducted about 2 years ago with all the federal laboratories, how to improve R&D or industry reaching to the R&D. So they write the similar, or they discovered similar strategy, go for what they call partnership intermediary. Reach out to partnership people. People could create partnership. So this is what the US advised. In Europe as well, they developed what they call science and technology intermediary. And so these are people who also help the small and medium enterprise company. And what is stated here underlined is that intermediary are there to help SME reach into the technology provider. Of course, the Europe respond also with the European Enterprise Network to help companies look for partnership. And Henry Chesbrough on open innovation talks about InnoMary, or a new word to that. We also heard of China. Beside the private side, there is also the public side, helping China, Shanghai, to find technology from within the part of Shanghai, China, and even internationally. So these are the emerging of intermediary. And I summarize what I feel about this landscape. There are failures in the market, but there are also opportunity in the market, or the IP market, we say. So failures, certainly from the business, they need information, they got gaps that they do not know how to address. So intermediary play a very important part to help address these gaps. Of course, from the R&D, you want to commercialize your technology. So you are also on the other side trying to find taker for your technology. And so many a time when I was in tech transfer, I spent 70% of my time spending time with the faculty or the research or within the organization. I spend only 30% talking to industry. Whereas intermediary may have more chances because every day they meet companies, or at least for me, I meet many hundreds and hundreds of companies. So we know what industry, and we can help bridge the gap. Of course, not the least, any government, and I believe there are government agencies here, you want to bridge the gap. Yes, you want to bridge the gap. And so this is of interest to both agency and certainly for Singapore, as we want to grow to be a place for R&D and IP. So with that, it brings me to the landing page as we see different countries, so how does Singapore respond? 2 years ago, or maybe one slide I promise you I'll introduce Singapore. So very quickly, Singapore is a very small country in the very center of ASEAN or Asia. So We are very small, the size of Bahrain. If you can relate to Bahrain, that is Singapore. Okay? We have grown in terms of populations to 5 million. In terms of economic GDP, we have grown to 266 billion. And in terms of per capita, we have grown to 60,000 US per capita. In terms of foreign reserve, these are indicated there. And what has been done over the last 40 years has to be built a place of many corporations, 7,000 multinational corporations from Samsung to P&G to so forth, setting their HQ and R&D in Singapore. So we are small, but yet I think there is opportunity. So this is a good idea of our economy, manufacturing, financial, business and constructions and so forth. In terms of manufacturing, we have electronics, precision, chemical, and so forth. All right? I'll give you the background so you know what kind of company I'm talking to in Singapore. And this is a very good summary. I like these slides because back I was born in the 60s, and those guys looks like me like that. We are very simple, but over time we have built from labor intensive to a very knowledge economy over the last 40 years. So as a small country, I hope we could share the experience to the big countries, larger countries like yourself. We are faced with competition from China, from India, from Indonesia, Malaysia. So the government has to invest in R&D. So we will invest 12 billion in the next 5 years, which we are now, in R&D. And with that, we have also built a lot of research institutions at the university, at the polytechnic, at A-Star. So we have a lot of R&D. But the challenge still to many of my industries, who do I talk to? And if I need a technology, I may need from 2, 3, 4 places. How do I get them together? So this is the role of what IPI, or IP Intermediary, started 2 years ago. I started with 3 people, now it's 10, and will grow to 20 people to really help industry look out for opportunity. The strategy we adopt to help company look for technology is 2 parts. One part, we have a technical team who visit companies and are highly technical to understand some of their technical needs to be able to look out for a technology for them. The other approach that we use is a marketplace. Either it is a virtual platform like a portal or a physical marketplace, which I will explain very shortly. So in the technical team, we visit companies. I've already visited 350 companies within 2 years. Big companies, small companies, startup. We meet companies, we understand their business, understand their needs. We then scan for technologies using patents, using our network, using crowdsourcing platform. We access them because different companies have different level of adoption. Big companies can take very raw technology. Startup or SME can take more ready technology. We have to make some assessment. Then we contact these people. Are you open to license? Or you open for partnership? It could be in Australia, Japan, anywhere. We'll do that. And then we match them and they'll do site visit. So we've done about many projects, and these are just examples of companies who come for us for location-based services. So we find them technology from Sweden, from Singapore, or people looking for coating technology. And this company is a small company in Singapore. They need a technology to do coating, for hard coating. They go to their principal to say, can I have a license? The principal say no. So he then approached us to find new technology. And we found from them in another country. All right? So this is how we help company. And we have company who need to improve contact lens material. We help them find in another country as well. So it is possible. We close licensing deals with this company. These are in the pipeline. Company need to clean toxic from garment. They throw a lot of toxic chemical after they dye your product. So they need to treat these toxic that throw. So they approach us for cleaning technology, treatment technology. There are companies who look for new material. There are companies who look for algorithms to improve fan motor. In India, there are a lot of fans, 4 million fans with motor. So if you can change the algorithm, You can improve the peak voltage and the component and the price, everything. So this is how we match for them. We also match people with air quality system and energy saving system. This is an interesting project because as intermediary, we also need to bring the regulators. It involves the air regulators, people who do with environment, people who do with building as well for energy. So we need to bring people together to make a deal happen. It doesn't come like that, all right? So very quickly, we work with partners. They are international, local, and international, and we work with agency. The second area we do is through the marketplace. So like anybody, we create a platform where you can also go in to get account to register your technology. Only one page we ask you to fill up, one page. And with that one page, we send to the industry of 3,000 or more. So we have success story where people are interested in earthquake. I'm sorry about the recent earthquake in China. But certainly, this earthquake could be used, and now it's used in Thailand, cheap, put a lot so that when movement comes, you advance people to get out of the house faster. So these are cheap earthquake detector. So it's licensed to a company. Finally, we have a marketplace, and we organized our first event last year, which have Philips Consumer to Rankits and other people participating in crowdsourcing platform. We get industry to come and stand and tell the whole R&D community what are their needs. So they will share with you their needs. So we had one last year, and it was very successful with more than 350 companies and organizations coming to pitch what their needs are. And of course, we have R&D organizations sharing what they have as well. So it's a marketplace of buyer and seller. So we're organizing the next one this coming year in September 24th. And I welcome King Abdullah Universities and other organizations to come.
2 minutes, please.
With that, I finish my last slide. We are now in the part of developing Singapore to be a global IP hub. And so this is a report they have just written after 12 months of discussion. You can download the report. And with that, I finish. Thank you.
شكرا. أنا دائما أنسى الميكروفون ما عذرت. شكرا الدكتور زياد على هذه المحاضرة الجميلة. الحقيقة لم يتبقى لنا وقت يمكن كافي بشكل كبير عشان الأسئلة. لدينا الآن 5 دقائق واحتمال نأخذ 5 دقائق من وقتكم من البريك. فالآن بنفتح النقاش. الحقيقة أي كومنت موجودة ما عندنا يمكن وقت كافي، فأرجو أنها لا تتجاوز نص دقيقة أو دقيقة. فيمكن مثل سياسة أمس بنبدأ من اليمين، فإذا كان في سؤال هنا، سؤال من هنا وسؤال من السيدات. في سؤال هنا. أي واحد يبي أسأله أتمنى أنه بس يقدم نفسه، وإذا كان عنده سؤال يعني على الأقل يحدد إذا كان موجه لشخص ما أو من المتحدثين يعني.
هشام العريفي من مكتب البراءة السعودي. My question for Professor Correa is about he mentioned about the relationship between the development and the intellectual property. You mentioned that the IP is not necessarily supporting the development, and while the IP is an incentive, as we know, for the innovation. As a developing country, how could we adapting the IP system to supporting and encouraging the development? Thank you.
أوكي، بناخذ عفوا ناخذ سؤال من السيدات. في سؤال السيدات؟ سؤال؟ طيب سؤال من الرجال. في سؤال من الوسط؟ من الوسط فيه؟ طيب أعطي الميكروفون الأخ.
My question for Paul, talking about the breakthrough innovation, and as we know that a few months ago the FDA implemented what we call the breakthrough designation for some breakthrough medications. My question is how to balance the new or the pharmaceutical lobbyists, which we believe that they force such designation to be implemented by the FDA, between the commercial application and the scientific implementation of such breakthrough medications?
شكرا على السؤال.
Well, thank you very much for the question. I think that the starting point is to consider that Saudi Arabia and other developing countries which are members of WTO have to comply with certain level of protection of intellectual property. So the question here is not about whether to have or not intellectual property. We do have intellectual property protection, copyright, patents, trademarks, so on and so forth. So the question is, what policy space is there under the TRIPS agreement, because I'm not encouraging any country not to comply with the TRIPS agreement, what space is there in order to promote innovation, industrial development, development of agriculture, so on and so forth. And then I would say that this is country specific. I think there is no general reply. It depends very much on the conditions in a particular country, on what your comparative advantages are, what your level of research and development is, what capacity you have to attract local and foreign investment, what your plans are, which are the sectors where you want to develop in the next 5, 10, or 20 years. So it depends very much on present conditions and what the national objectives are. I understand, for instance, that Saudi Arabia has already planned to industrialize and to develop certain areas. So I think that in that respect, you need to look at the intellectual property system and try to adapt it to those conditions now and the plan. So this is not a very easy task, but there are certain elements, as the Japanese case shows, that may be taken into account. For instance, let's look at the patentability requirements. So one question I think it's important to address is, should we apply lax patentability requirements as it is the case today, for instance, in the United States, and then allow a large number of patents to be granted? Or are we going for a system where we apply rigorous patentability standards and therefore we grant patents when there is significant inventive step involved? So this is a strategic decision. You have the choice to do it. You can do the United States Patent Office way, so very large number of patents with very little inventive step, or you may go the way of other countries. For instance, this is the way that India has shown with the Novartis case decided by the Supreme Court. This is also the approach followed by Brazil, by Argentina. Well, they think that in order to create a space for local innovation based on looking at existing technologies, improving on them, and developing local industries, the best approach is to have a strict criteria of patentability. Then you grant a patent when there is a merit for that, when there is inventive contribution. But you prevent companies from seeking patents just to block competition, which is the case was referred to yesterday by our second speaker on the case of evergreening, patenting on incremental innovations that will block actually local innovation. So I think this is the kind of options that need to be looked at. I'll be happy to discuss this later on with more detail, but there is no recipe. I think it depends on, it's very country specific, but there are methodologies, I think, to address this issue properly.
Dr. Correa, على التوضيح. Excuse me, can you repeat your question?
Okay, Paul, the question again, in one of your slides, in the upper left corner, where you said that there is a difficult breakthrough or penetration for the pharmaceutical companies to have the breakthrough innovation. A few months ago, the FDA applied the system which is called breakthrough designation for the new pharmaceutical products that may show breakthrough, which goes only through one stage of clinical trial rather than 3 stages. My question is, there has been a debate that it has been pushed by some of the pharmaceutical lobbyists within the market. How to make such balance just to evaluate whether it has been made as a real breakthrough or because of a commercial need? Because the term breakthrough is kind of, sometimes it's vague term, you know, it's not specific, it's not confined.
Well, I think you raise a real issue is, in hindsight, oftentimes you get a sense for what, was it really a breakthrough or not. It's very difficult in real time to know, are you going to allow a product to come, especially through the FDA, in an accelerated case, or is it going to have to go through a more extensive set of trials? To me, that's more of a technical question, and to be honest with you, it's outside of my personal area of expertise. But what I do know is that in that particular area, as a business person, what you want to do is rapidly translate and understand as quickly as you can what are the strengths and weaknesses of your technology. You want your second generation of patent fences to fix the weaknesses and build up this and play on the strengths. And for those that are strong, you then want the third generation to protect it. And it would be nice if the governments would help in all they could in having that process be as speedy an evaluation as is safe. And that's the thing that's very subject matter specific, I'm afraid. Yeah, we can talk some more maybe later. Thank you for your question.
عفوا احنا ناخذ من وقت البريك الان فهل من سؤال؟ الميكروفون يا شيخ.
لو سمحت.
Okay. Thank you for your presentations. My question is to Dr. Carlos. Back in the history, when the developing country accepted TRIPS, I mean, since you mentioned that developing countries should look for the spaces and the gaps for chances to, I mean, to avoid that much restriction or the effects of the IP protection to the country. Why the developing countries accepted these provisions?
Okay, well, regarding the first question, why developing countries accepted the TRIPS agreement, this is reflected very much in the literature on the history of the GATT negotiations that led to the TRIPS agreement. So many books have addressed this, in particular some economists. I also participated in the negotiation of TRIPS agreement as a representative of my government, so I have also an inside view. And the reason was that when the GATT was, the negotiations were taking place regarding the expansion of the rules under GATT, which led to the creation of the World Trade Organization. Developed countries posed the following dilemma to developing countries. They said, if you want concessions in agriculture and textiles, and these were the concessions that developing countries were really looking for in the Uruguay round, to get access to markets in agriculture, textiles, for instance, India, Pakistan, and other countries. So the developed countries said, if you want any concession in agriculture and textiles in order to allow you to increase export, you need to give us intellectual property protection. This is, some authors call this the grand deal in the GATT negotiations. So it was the margin, the room for maneuver for the bargaining capacity of developing countries was very limited. So it was just take it or leave it. And I can tell you that the Uruguay round negotiation started in 1986 after Punta del Este meeting of ministers. Developing countries rejected to enter into negotiations on intellectual property until 1989. So for 3 years, developing countries